Alright, it's part 2 of the 2008 reevaluation grades, and first game on this half of 2008, I guess, was Dodge'em on the Atari 2600, which I gave a B-. And it's either a B or B+. I'd say a B. A solid B. It's such a simple concept, and there's no maze changes or anything different with the screen, but it's still a solid, fun, addictive, one more time kind of game, where you lose and you say, okay, let me try one more time. It has that kind of quality to it. Solid B for Dodge'em. Video Olympics on Atari 2600, I gave a C- originally. I mean, it was only Pong, a lot of variations of Pong, but they were different enough from each other, especially at the time, too. 1977, you gotta give it some credit. I think I kind of want to make this a C. I'm gonna leave it as a C-. It's I mean, you can't really argue with Pong. I mean, the thing is too, it's like at the time the Atari 2600 was released, Pong was still a fun game, and here you had a whole shitload of variations of Pong. Yeah, it's not, like the cover says, all these 50-some video games. No, it's not. That's not the case. But Pong is still fun, and there's a lot of versions of it on here. I almost kind of want to give this a C. I'm moving up to a C, particularly because of kind of similar to Super Mario Brothers, like where it was in relation at the time. It was basically Super Pong. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on NES was a C- originally as well, and again, same thing. I think I bumped this one to a C, just a solid C instead from a C-, because it's it is flawed and it's not as good as its successors on the NES. It needed polishing, but I do still think that C- is a little low. I'd give it just a straight up C. Ms. Pac-Man on Atari 2600, I gave an A, and I'm gonna leave it at that. It's just it's a great game, great port of a great game. Definitely improvement over regular Pac-Man on Atari. About as good of a translation from the arcade as you could get on the 2600. Donkey Kong Jr. on the 2600, I gave a C, and so yeah, Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong on Atari 2600 was a C as well, and I think that they're both pretty comparable. The only thing is, Junior doesn't have the fruits that you can knock down on the enemies, which is a pretty big hit. So I almost kind of want to make this a C-, but I'm gonna leave it as a C. I feel like it's still okay. I still don't think it's C- level, so I'll leave this as a C. Tecmo Bowl on the NES, I gave a B. And this was the precursor to what would be Tecmo Super Bowl, the excellent football game that we all know and love. Tecmo Bowl had like half the teams, the sprites were bigger, but this was still a good game. It was still fun to play. And at the time when, it came out, pre-Tecmo Super Bowl, it was still the best game you could get on NES for football anyway. So I will leave this as a B. Almost a B+, but I'll leave this as a B. Barnstorming, I gave a D+, and this one's another one that I ranked too low. I will say that it definitely is nowhere near as exciting as a lot of Activision titles. It's, just back and forth between the windmill towers and the barns. More. There could have been more to do, but I still bump this up to a C. Despite those flaws, it still plays better than it sounds when you describe it. So I would say C for Barnstorming. Combat, I gave a B-, and it's like it almost kind of want to make this a C-level game, but this was the first, it was one of the launch titles on the 2600, so you can't expect the world, and this is one of those kind of, what I was saying, like with Barnstorming, where even though it's simple and there aren't a lot of bells and whistles in combat, but it's still fun. Definitely a multiplayer when you have a battle with somebody. That intensity is still there, despite how rudimentary the game is. So B-, I will leave it at that. Mega Man 3 on NES, I gave an A- originally, and you know, it's like I could see why people will rank it a little bit lower than that because of how unfinished it is. Especially toward the end of the game, those Wily Castle levels are very bland. I can see why why this could be a B+ game. It flirts with B+ because of the levels that aren't complete and the lack of cutscenes to make the story mode. It's got a tangible story too that's glossed over a little bit in the manual, completely ignored in the game because they didn't make any cutscenes. So yeah, there was it's missing stuff. It could have been on par with Mega Man 2, but I'd still give it a low A-. I think it's just still really fun. Frogger on Atari 2600, I gave an A, and I almost kind of want to make this an A-, but I mean, this is still a strong adaptation of Frogger. I'll leave it as an A. Frogs and Flies, I gave an A- originally. That's about right. Yeah, A- it is. Nice little multiplayer game, sucking down flies. Yeah, A-. Tailspin originally was a D+, and as much as I kind of want to make this a C-, this was a misfire by Capcom. I would leave this as a D+. Adventure on Atari 2600, I gave an A, and this is similar to Frogger. I almost kind of want to make this an A- because of how visually plain it is, but that's not enough for me. The game functions. It still functions excellently. Yeah, the dragons look like ducks. Who gives a shit? That's part of the charm. So is the plainness of everything. Though it's the first adventure game, or like around the first adventure game. It paved the way. A. Adventure, I gave a C- originally. Yeah, it's not as strong as the arcade. It's a kind of sloggy paced, but I think that I think it deserves a little bit more than what I gave it, so I'm going to change that one to a C. Skate or Die, I gave a C+. It could have been a little bit more, maybe some more events here and there. It isn't flawless, but I think B- is where I would change that to. Boxing, I gave an A- originally. And I mean, yeah, this is no Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or anything like that, but it is definitely the best boxing game on the 2600. I would give this one, I'd leave it as it is, A-. Still fun, especially multiplayer. Karate, I gave an F, and yeah, that's where that one's staying. It sucks. There's nothing that needs to be reevaluated for this one, besides just remembering how the experience was. Metal Gear on MSX, I gave a B+. Definitely set the standard. It started it all. It was very ambitious, but it definitely didn't overstep where it needed to be. Just very cryptic on some of the clues for figuring out what you needed to do next in some spots. There's a lot more to it than in the sequel, Metal Gear 2, but I definitely don't want. So I don't want to make this an A-. I don't want to increase it, but I also don't want to decrease it really either. B+, I think, is where I'll keep it. Phoenix was an A- originally, the Atari 2600 version, and I think the only thing that I don't know, I'm trying to figure out why it needed to drop to a minus. I mean, it's a great port. I think this one should be just a straight up A. And that was the final game of 2008, so that'll do it for the reevaluations of 2008. So somewhere down the road, I'll move on to 2009 as well, and we'll see how that goes.